Okay, the live stream started. Welcome to Cabinet on Monday, the 6th of December 2021. I remind you that the meeting is being live streamed and also will be kept on the internet for future reference. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence, and as I can see on the screen, there isn't any. Next item is the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I have somebody to endorse that? Well, I will endorse it if somebody will agree it, unless anybody's got any changes to the minutes.
Happy to, second, Leader.
Thank you very much. Next item is something I always forget, is receive declarations of interest. I think we maybe have one, do we, or not?
Yes, please, Leader. I think it's item number 11. It's the King George V playing fields. I'll reference it there. It's not really an issue because I have dispensation. So and I've completed the form. But for the record, I will repeat. I will interject before we start that item, if I may.
It's item 13.
Thanks.
So you've got dispensation to stay, speak and vote, yes?
I do, but I'll reiterate that when we get there, if that's all right, because it's not that I need to withdraw.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Next item is a reference. The reference, there's two of them. Reference from Democratic Services Committee of the 22nd of November. It's in relation to councillors' safety and support. The report sets out a useful guidance so the councillors understand the steps they should take to keep themselves safe. The authority's lone working policy was also attached as an appendix to the report, which applied to employees and ensures that there are adequate systems in place to ensure the health and safety and well-being of their own workers. It also added Appendix B to the report. There was a detailed guide relating to the personal safety of councillors. The guidance provides assistance to councillors carrying out their roles safely and effectively, and this complies with the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales Annual Report, which states that an authority must support the work of its councillors and statutory co-opted members to ensure them to carry out their duties, and this included the safety of its councillors. There was some discussion during the committee. They recommended the guidance be endorsed and placed on the authority's website and emailed to all councillors, subject to resolutions 2 and 3, which were, the second one was that it be recommended to the Cabinet, as it's here now, and to council meetings, that where a councillor is at personal risk or significant threat of harm in carrying out their role, that consideration be given to funding appropriate security measures, particularly in instances where such measures have been advised by the police or security services, and that 3, it be recommended that the next Cabinet, as we're doing, and Council meets the delegated authority, at its meetings, delegates authority to the Head of Democratic Services and Head of Finance, Section 151 officer, to consider and determine any requests for such funding. Recommendation from them for the Democratic Services Committee for us to consider it. This is what we're currently doing. I think it's a sensible way forward. So can I recommend from Cabinet that we endorse the guidance, and that we recommend to Council that is both endorsed and that it is placed on the authority's website and emailed to all councillors, and I think probably include all town and community councillors for their information. So it's a sensible way forward, and I would recommend that it's going to Council tonight if we agree it, and I think we probably will. So agreed? Yeah.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. The next item is still another reference from Democratic Services on 22nd of November, and again it relates to diversity and democracy and the action plans. At the Council at its meeting, if you remember, on the 26th of July, considered the initial report on diversity and democracy, and it resolved certain things which are covered within the covering report here. A draft, which basically set out an action plan. So a draft diversity in democracy action plan has therefore been prepared, which was attached to the Appendix A to that report. The plan included details of planned activities to be undertaken by the Council ahead of the local government elections in 2022. as well as some activities that were proposed to be undertaken following the elections. The objectives within the action plan had been based on those suggested by Welsh Government. And again, the Democratic Services Committee recommended endorsement of the report, but referred it to us here at Cabinet and hopefully passed on to Council recommending the adoption. So therefore, again, very sensible. We talked about it before Council. I move the Cabinet endorse the plan and recommends it for approval and endorsement to the Council tonight. And obviously that will go forward to this evening. Everybody's agreed? Yes?
And happy to forward, to second.
Thank you. Good, thank you. The next item is the meeting of the Joint Consultative Forum. It's the minutes of the meeting of the 18th of October. I found it a particularly interesting read, and it looks as if they had a considerable amount of work that they considered. Things like the accommodation strategy. It was updated. The forum was updated on the strategy which they endorsed, and it's a very comprehensive report. So I'm not going to read it out. They also talked about flexible working framework. Again, that was updated. There was an update, and they agreed it. Importantly, they talked about workforce strategy and the draft implementation plan, and again that was considered. They also considered the succession planning, management development training, and diversity of recent celebrations celebrations of Inclusion Week. And again, the report talks about there were several learning and development initiatives running both internally and externally across the organisation. It also talked about reshaping programme, an update on the reshaping programme, and it can also consider an update on Project Zero. So they had a hell of a lot of work carried out. Update on the new Oracle system, the management of absence, and finally they also talked about the senior leadership team update. I found it a particularly interesting read. Most the things that came from it, most of the issues were noted, but they did so after a comprehensive, it seems to me anyway, a comprehensive discussion. So unless anybody wants to pick anything up from it, can I move that it be noted at this stage, but thank them for the amount of work that they put into this meeting.
And formally second, Leader.
Thank you very much. In case we'll move forward. The next item is a report from myself. It's the use of the Managing Director's emergency powers. This is something we regularly have to advise Cabinet of the exercising of emergency powers by the Managing Director since this last report on the 25th of October. They are listed before you. It is their recommended noting. It talks about issues, for example, painting of the Penarth Pier and highway infrastructure, which is already ongoing. And obviously he talked about the Barry Waterfront School, which is quite important considering that we've been having lots of dialogue with the developers who are building it on our behalf. Also talked about food poverty grant, etc. So unless anybody wants to take anything out of that particular report, can I move that it be noted as it's already been dealt with by emergency powers? Is that agreed?
Agreed and seconded.
Good, thank you very much. The next item is to seek approval for the council tax base for 22-23. This is needed to approve the council tax base in accordance with the local authority calculation of taxes base Wales regulations 1985 as amended. Basically, the report recommends that pursuant to this report, in accordance with the local authority's calculations of base rate regulations, the amount calculated by the Vale Glamorgan Council as its council tax base for the year 2022-23 shall be for the whole area 61,978 properties. And if you look in the recommendations, it lists all of those in each of the areas for the town and community councils too. Basically, the reason for this, we have to do it each year, is the tax base has to be submitted to the Welsh Government in line with their deadline of the 12th of November. The figure needs to be confirmed by the Executive in order to meet the deadline of agreeing the council tax base by the 31st of December. The final ratification tax base has been returned to Welsh Government by the 4th of has to be there by the 4th of January. And obviously this tax base will be used by the council to calculate the council tax for 22-23 by the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales and the levelling bodies who apportioned precepts from April 2022. The key issues are in there. The tax base shows you how it's calculated in 2.1, but there is also something I need to just report, is that the assumption made at the time is the calculations are based on data available to the council at the 31st of October, and that the collection rate this year will be 97.1%. This is a matter for Cabinet, and therefore I move the recommendation that the whole area 61,978, comprising of those in the table listed. Can I for your authority, please? Agree?
Yes, and formally seconded.
Thank you very much. The next item is the draft response to the Welsh Government's consultation on the Code of Recommended Practice for Local Authority Publicity. It seeks approval and submission to Welsh Government. Basically, the report attaches at Appendix A, the Welsh Government's consultation document, and at Appendix B, the Council's response to the consultation. Cabinet therefore has to consider the contents and approve the draft consultation response for submission to Welsh Government by the 10th of December. Also, in order to do that, Cabinet needs to use the urgency decision procedure set out in 1414 of the Constitution in order to return the matter to the Welsh Government before the response deadlines. So the recommendations are that the Cabinet considers the content of the report and the draft response to the consultation and agrees the same for submission to the Welsh Government. And as I said, the urgency procedures in 1414 are set out. Basically, the Code of Practice sets up the principle by which the Council publicises its activities and also engages with the people they serve. And it's important to add really that public money should not be used for political purposes, and public organisations must take this into account when providing information, planning publicity campaigns and other forms of communication with the public, which are about the activity and services of the organisations. It's a reminder really that public money needs to be spent on publicity to support the aims and objectives of the organisation. The code is relevant at all times, but perhaps particularly more relevant during the pre-election period, which we're coming up to. So basically, because we carry out many statutory duties, we have to publish many documents. It does reflect on how the world has moved on since the last code, which is in 2014. We have now social media platforms, which we didn't have then, but the code is still equally as applicable to those platforms as it is to television, radio or printed press. Specific reference is now in relation to council newspapers, and really that's should have been removed from the draft consultation on the basis that some councils probably do, but I think there are now better and more reasonable and probably more cost-effective ways of doing it. So it does seek to address outdated practices, but one thing it talks about in the draft, and I'm raising this because it talks about, it doesn't make reference to the issue of candidates' personal statements. It is proposed in line with the proposed local elections principal areas Wales rules, and the draft election Wales rules 2021, which was recently announced. However, that part, in terms of the Welsh Government, they've now withdrawn the consideration of candidates' personal statements for the next elections, but what they did say is they may consider it for the future. So that's the reason why in the draft response itself, it actually refers to it, because although it may not be applicable in terms of the 2022 elections, it may be applicable after, and therefore we're saying basically you have to be careful with this on the basis that candidates' personal statements have to be placed on the council's website, and it could be inferred that whatever's on the council's website is what the council believes and will do. So I think there are some flaws that need to be considered. Whether or not Welsh Government will accept it or not, whether they'll continue to do it in the future, I don't know. But I think it was worthwhile us making comments in relation to this in the draft response. So, as I said, the Appendix A is the response can be found at the appendices to the report. So basically, I'm asking for Cabinet to approve it, use 1414 so we can get it off in time to Welsh Government. I don't know if anybody else has picked up anything in it. I think it's important the code is reviewed regularly, and clearly, things are different now than they were then before the last code, and I think this probably brings us back into the 21st century. Let's put it that way. Yeah, is that agreed?
Yeah, and formally seconded.
Good. If nobody wants to make any comment, even better. Can I therefore move on to the reports of the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Education in relation to when the schools admission arrangements for 23-24?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, as you just outlined, this is related to school admission arrangements for 2023-24. So this is not for next September, it's September afterwards. And it's something that we do every year where we consult upon changes coming in sort of 18 months or so ahead of time. So this is to seek Cabinet's approval to actually go forward with the consultation on the local authority's school admission arrangements as required. We have to consult and agree the admission arrangements by no later than the 15th of April 2022. And so it'll go through scrutiny and then have full consultation, etc. before that. The admission arrangements have been amended to reflect the changes to the law on admissions as a result of the implementation of the Additional Learning Needs and Education Tribunal Wales Act 2018, which are not currently reflected in the school's admissions code. And if I'm correct, I think, let me just double check, if you look at paragraph 2.3, details of that are below. So if the recommendations are that Cabinet approves the consultation required to agree the local authority admission arrangements, which are outlined in Appendix A for all community schools in the Vale of Glamorgan, so that we can put that in place within the statutory timescales. And I would so move.
Okay, that seems sensible. Something we do each year, but something we have to do each year too. So that's fine. And it also includes the admissions for the 6 partner voluntary aided schools as well, which is covered in 2.6. Okay, I'm happy to second that. If anybody else has got any comments? Nope. In that case, we'll move on. Thank you. Next item is item 11, and it's the principles of a regional approach to employability. And again, Liz, I think this is yours, please. It
is, Leader, and yes, this is to we're looking to adopt a framework for employability across the region, and local authorities across the Cardiff Capital Region, even before the Cardiff Capital Region, have successfully delivered employability for 2 decades, and tens of thousands of local residents have been supported into employment and into better paid employment, so it's to do with progression as well, or into further learning, and it's helped our young people that are not in employment, education or training, and has been a key pillar for early intervention and prevention. And Councillor Caffer knows only too well that the amazing work that's been done by the youth services on that, supporting our young people. So in 2019, the Cardiff Capital Region Employment and Skills Plan highlights the value and importance that employers place on employability and the key role that it plays in helping residents into the jobs of the future. I mean, that's particularly important in light of the recovery from the COVID pandemic as well. So the Regional Skills Partnership and Local Authority Cluster Group have been working together to produce a new regional framework to guide how employability activities are delivered in this region in the future. And the framework attached to Appendix B sort of lays out a whole range of areas that they want to look at. And I think that actually is well worth looking at in the report. I mean, the one that I really like is the subsidiarity works, which is mainly about how you might plan at a regional level, but you deliver locally, because people locally that know the residents, know their needs, and also tend to have local contacts. And so we can have greater impact. I think that's been proved over recent years. So anyway, this framework's been approved by the Regional Skills Partnership and Regional Business Council. And it's worth noting that with the ending of European social funding in 2022, this framework will form the basis of regional applications for post-EU funding for employability. It's going to be tricky because we all know that there's not as much money available post-EU funding, so we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But the recommendations before Cabinet today are that members endorse the principle of a locally delivered, regionally coordinated approach to employability post-EU. And secondly, that members approve the framework for future employability in the Cardiff capital region, as shown in Appendix B. I would so move.
Thank you, Liz. I'm happy to second, and as you say, what will come after the EU programme has gone, hopefully in Wales we'll still have not a penny less than we had from Europe, but only time will tell. I'm happy to second. Does anybody else got any comments? Nope. In that case, I will move on to agenda item 12, which is a draft local housing strategy for 21 to 26. And Margaret has taken this, and I see there's a very long dialogue in terms of the executive summary, but there are 3 recommendations. Margaret. You're on mute, Margaret.
Thank you, Leader. I do it every time.
Yes, somebody always does it, don't worry about it.
This is to consider the draft local housing strategy 2021 to 2026. There is a lot of report here, and it's a good report. There has been residents involved with it. There's been workshops and everything. But the proposal for local housing strategy sets out the vision for housing in the Vale of Glamorgan, which is all residents in the Vale of Glamorgan have access to good quality, suitable housing and can live happily and independent. The local housing strategy 21 to 26 builds on the previous housing strategy for the Vale of Glamorgan, sets out how the council will work in partnership to meeting the housing requirements of the area. And as we're a stock retained local council, we kept our council properties. We will be working with other partnerships to develop a housing for people in the Vale of Glamorgan that's suitable for all people lives. There is only 3 recommendations, but as I say, it is a good report. There has been lots of workshops and I was involved with some of them, so I'm happy to put the recommendations to you. That the Cabinet considers the contents of this report and endorses the draft local housing strategy 2021 to 2026. The draft local housing strategy is referred to the Housing and Safe Communities Scrutiny Committee for its considerations. That the view of the Scrutiny Committee on the draft local housing strategy 21-20 to 26 will be considered by the Cabinet prior to the final strategy being referred to full council for approval. So I'm asking for your approval, please.
Happy to do so. I think I'm happy to endorse and second the endorsement of the housing draft of the draft plan. And obviously it's got a scrutiny, so we'll see what scrutiny has to say before we then take it on to council. Happy to second. Thank you, Margaret. Has anybody else got any comments in relation to that? Nope. Okay. In that case, we go to item 13, which is King George playing fields inland dock, and I think Peter has already declared an interest in this one.
Yes, but just for the record's sake, if I may, Leader, just to reiterate, I have dispensation to speak and vote on matters covered under the reshaping of services agenda, which I believe this fulfills. But there's no secret that I'm also a member of Llandoch Community Council, so I intend to certainly remain and to support this motion. Thank you. Thank you.
And just to clarify, it does form part of our reshaping services programme anyway. So, and you have the dispensation in order for that. So, without further ado, I should bring in the Cabinet Member for Leisure, Arts and Culture, whose report it is.
Thank you so much, Leader. Has anybody else got something you can say now before I start? Thank you. This is one of the reports I do like to bring into Cabinet, because it does show what we can do with other town and community councils to the benefit of the people who we are actually here to serve, our communities. So this is in relation to King George V playing field in Llandoch, and we're seeking approval to enter into a deed of dedication with Fields in Trust to protect the green space status attached to King George V playing field in Llandoch. So it is, we've had a previous joint initiatives with Llandoch Community Council, including the mugger that's already in place there. And they have suggested to us that the field be registered in Fields as Trust to ensure its continued use for future generations. By registering the playing field with Fields in Trust, it is subject to a deed of dedication, ensuring its continued use as green open space. Discussions with the Fields in Trust have confirmed they'd welcome the opportunity for this land to be registered with them. We have two recommendations before us today. One, that delegated authority is granted to the Director of Environment and Housing in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Leisure, Arts and Culture, and the Monitoring Officer Head of Legal and Democratic Services to designate the King George V playing field under the appropriate Fields in Trust programme. Secondly, that the Monitoring Officer Head of Legal and Democratic Services be authorised to sign a deed of dedication with Fields in Trust and register the same. I really welcome things like this. We're doing a lot of work in relation to single-use sports facilities now and other green spaces. We know how important it is for people of all ages to be outside, to be able to walk safely, comfortably, happily in lovely green spaces that we are the guardians of. So I'm really hopeful that Cabinet will support me in this report today.
Well, I think I'd second you. Yes, I think.
Thank you, Leader.
You're absolutely right. It does ensure that this is protected in perpetuity, as we've done before. Eddie, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, I'd just like to concur with that. It's particularly in the rural Vale and Llantryd, we've had a couple of developers trying to take over our parks, so we're really pleased to support this as well.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No, in that case, that's agreed. And then we move to item 14, which is the objection report in relation to Corella Street, Barry, a proposed disabled person's parking place traffic order regulation. Peter, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you, colleagues. You'll have seen objection reports before. It's fair to say that there were two objections raising a number of concerns. If anyone is interested, I would encourage them to read the report and the appendices. Yep. But I'm satisfied that the officers have addressed those concerns, and therefore I'm recommending that the objections to this proposal be rejected for those reasons. And the proposed disabled person's parking space in the street be implemented, and the objectors are advised of this decision.
Thank you. It is in my ward. Anybody got any comments? Clearly there were some responses made, but the officers have picked them all up and given us their advice on what they received. So I'm happy to second if nobody else is. So everybody agreed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is any items which I have urgent under part 1. I have none, and neither do I have any under part 2. So I will formally close the meeting, and I will ask the Democratic Service Officer to stop the recording, please. Thank you very much.